Good morning, everyone. This is Yamini Pothureddy from Team 4 New Zealand. Welcome to the Digital Forensic Expert Testimony of Project 4. Ladies and gentlemen of the panel, before we begin with the main questioning and testimony portion of the presentation, we will briefly provide an overview of the events of the previous three project scenarios. Project 1 is the Global Economic Summit, where we examined the policies and laws of all the participating 5I nations, completed a system risk and vulnerability assessment, and provided a cybersecurity policy and the baseline analysis as the final product. Project 2 is the nations behaving badly. We detected a denial of service event and were called upon a quickly analysis and respond to anonymous network activities. Our final deliverable was a cybersecurity risk assessment that incorporated several major analyses such as incident response plan and final forensic report of the attack. Project 3 was lockdown. Dealt with a ransomware attack on the summit systems. Our team delivered an end-to-end briefing on the attack to the CISO, including ransomware specific incident response and a full business continuity plan deployment as a contingency plan. Scenario 1, the Global Economic Summit. The Five Eyes, abbreviated 5I, is an alliance between the nations of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the United States. These five nations are united agreement for the cooperation and information sharing in signals, military, and human intelligence. In this scenario, we conducted an attribution analysis to determine bad actors by investigating a series of IP addresses that showed potential activity, showing some questionable activity from Russia, China, Saudi Arabia. Also, in preparation, we conducted a cyber policy review for the 5I nations across a series of different areas such as security and risk management, data acquisition, preservation analysis, and transfer and conducted cyber policy metrics. We also examined international regulations and initiatives with recommendations such as indicators of compromise, abnormal detection, and frequency and pattern analysis for incident investigation. As a further part of our preparation, we created a network security checklist to help security staff determine threat levels and review network components and protections. We also conducted a system risk vulnerability analysis using the various models. These, along with a forensic analysis report, resulted in our final cybersecurity policy and baseline analysis deliverables. The second scenario, the nations behaving badly, began with security staff detecting an intrusion on the subnet network, which appeared to be caused by data exfiltration seamlessly performed by an insider. As a result of this, the team conducted an analysis of potential attack vectors across hardware, software, operating systems, telecommunications, and human sources, as well as a review of attribution techniques. We assessed the various attack vectors and created a vulnerability matrix assigning social engineering, man-in-the-middle, ransomware, and mobile malware categories as the highest threat levels. A cybersecurity risk assessment was also conducted where our team made recommendations such as training, multi-factor authentications, role-based access control, encryption, and system hardening in order to address some of the more serious vulnerabilities. This scenario also necessitated the creation of an incident response plan where we designed roles and personnel of our SIT team. Our SIT team detailed the steps for each incident response plan: preparation, detection, analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery, and post-incident activity. At the point security staff encountered another stage on the submit systems. This time is serial of service attack with USCIS CISO reported high volume activities shutting down web services to the GAS. to the nations attending nations government websites as well as generating high latency to other external websites during the incident response. As a service level agreement SLA was formulated with Fox Telecom Department, the internet service provider, in order to mitigate future denial of service attacks. A full forensic analysis of the attack was conducted using tools such as Wireshark, and network logs and IP addresses where the attack originated was identified. These analyses were all compiled into the final deliverable to CISO. In our final scenario lockdown, the summit encountered a ransomware attack and the summit attendees were unable to access confidential summit data from the network servers. Investigation identified the source as a false warning email from a law enforcement agency. In response to the new attack, the team conducted a malware analysis. This began by investigating the coordinator's inability to access documents or files on the shared folder of the computers. The affected computer was recovered for team members to begin examining the infected system. The analysis required team members to apply skills such as password cracking, cryptogram, decryption packet capture analysis, attack script analysis, and steganography. A simulated attack was performed and resulted a potential password to unlock the files targeted by ransomware throughout the incident response and investigation. The management and teams of all nations to the summit was kept up to date by series of 3 situation reports or SITRAPs provided by the team, where actions taken, intelligence gathered were detailed, and these were incorporation into final intelligence debriefing report. In order to mitigate future potential attacks, the team examined the software development lifecycle to address potential weaknesses and vulnerabilities before release, as well as the best practices for the development. The team also created a comprehensive business continuity plan so that contingencies to restore business as usual be ready in the event of a disaster or malware ransomware attack. These analysis, the lesson learned, and recommendations for improvements were all combined into the final deliverable to the CISO. Now we are open up the floor to any questions that the panel might have. The question 1: what are the legal challenges associated with cyber incidents involving foreign countries? How do internal laws affect e-discovery? There are significant legal challenges when pursuing criminal aspects or digital evidence across borders. The sovereignty exercised by foreign governments within their own borders and over their own citizens must be respected. New Zealand courts have generally demonstrated a presumption against extraterritorial application of New Zealand law. Because of this, each nation's laws and procedures must be followed when investigating cyber incidents originating in foreign countries. Generally, this is left to the legal authority of the country in question, and a MLA, a mutual legal assistance request or extradition request, is filed with that government to request data and a suspect respectively. There is also a question of attribution. Attribution analysis, as shown in the earlier reviewed scenarios, can often be difficult and even more tenuous at best when found. The foreign government may be far less willing to cooperate without clear evidence trying an incident to its boundaries or citizens. With many nations, the New Zealand may already have agreements in place for these types of requests. E-discovery may be greatly affected depending on what the local regulations and procedures may be, as not all countries share the same legal viewpoints, where from precedent, government, or cultural differences. Some nations may not even have a convention of e-discovery, which can further complicate efforts. Even nations with similar governmental systems and cultural backgrounds may have differences. For example, the United Kingdom has a much narrower view of what is considered relevant e-discovery when the New Zealand does. generally legislation related to online privacy and data protection, and cybercrime and jurisdiction will affect the legal aspects of cyber incident investigation and e-discovery. New Zealand has also enacted cyber related legislation, notability as the Privacy Act 2020 to address data protection and breach reporting. While the legislation is in place to align with other members of 5E, it is important to note that New Zealand does not mandate any penalties for non-compliance. Within United States, the laws are generally sector-based. For example, for data protection, there is a Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, Financial, and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA for healthcare, and the Communication Act for technology, which protects customers' proprietary network information. The other nations of 5E have similar regulation across the different categories with slight differences. The United Kingdom has the UK General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, modeled on the EU's GDPR, which variations to national security, intelligence services, and immigration. The United Kingdom also enacted the Crime Act of 2019, which allows law enforcement to obtain electronic data directly from overseas communications service providers. Canada has its Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act that applies to any protected information collected by Canadian businesses and any foreign businesses that operate in Canada. Canada also has a communication security establishment which is tasked with cybersecurity and electronic data. Australia also has legislation relating to privacy and data protection, the Australian Privacy Act. Question 2. What are the legal challenges of accessing and retrieving electronic evidence stored on foreign soil? Assuming cloud storage was used, what procedures were followed to access and retrieve digital evidence stored in the cloud? As noted in the answers to the previous question, when the source of an attack can be attributed to an actor or location on foreign soil using detailed attribution analysis methods noted previously, and the digital forensic investigation seeks potential evidence that may not be housed within a nation's own borders. The investigator cannot simply use local laws and procedures to acquire that data. As such, the investigator will need to consult with their local colleagues and make a formal request to the host country, where it is presumed that the foreign government will exercise its own legal authority and procedures to acquire the requested data. Again, this is greatly simplified with the countries that the New Zealand has agreed in place with, such as the other 5I nations. Similarly, in cases of cloud storage, it will also depend on the question of where, but there is some question of how where is defined. Where the company provides the services is headquartered, where the customer contracting the services is located, where the data is actually stored, that is the physical location of the servers, or even where the data is mirrored or backupped. Additionally, since the state of cloud data is constantly changing, some of these locations may even be difficult to determine. In the case of the summit, which is taking place in the United Kingdom, if we were pursuing cloud data housed on servers in the UK, we representing the New Zealand would need to observe the legal regulations and guidelines of United Kingdom. If the data was stored in multiple locations, a forensic investigation will need to observe the laws and procedures of each country involved. Question 3. Specific to the New Zealand, how did the international laws and jurisdictions influence the processes and procedures followed during the forensic investigation? Certainly, as the New Zealand team, we followed New Zealand regulation and guidelines for most of the forensic investigation processes and procedures. However, since the summit is taking place in the United Kingdom, we must follow the UK's laws, especially in regards to data privacy. In this case, that means the UK GDPR. Anywhere that the UK legal regulations and guidelines conflict with New Zealand, we must defer to the United Kingdom standards. Question 4. What conflicts arose between ethics and international laws during the forensic investigations? How did these conflicts affect the investigations? How are the conflicts mitigated or resolved? Fortunately, we did not encounter any ethical dilemmas during the investigations of any of the incidents, as the scope of the attacks was localized to the summit. However, it should be noted that applicable local privacy laws that were detailed earlier should be observed at all times during digital forensic evidence collection based on the relevant locations of the cyber incident, for example, source and target, and the citizenship of those who may be relevant to the investigation. Question 5. What steps were taken to protect New Zealand soil and citizens during the international investigation? Describe any risks to the country, businesses, or citizens from your investigations. The New Zealand team followed their incident response plan and the well-defined steps there, including post-incident forensic investigation directives, emphasizing chain of custody and documentation. The attacks on the summit did not appear to target the New Zealand specifically, so no immediate action was necessary. If the attack had been on the New Zealand directly, we would have been able to call upon additional government resources such as the assistance of the CERT team from the Government Communication Security or a National Cyber Policy Office or a National Cyber Security Center, NCSC. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you for your questions, and we hope that all your concerns have been addressed with this testimony. Thank you.